so much pressure from ourselves and from the external world to be constantly responsible. We're responsible
Yeah.
for our homes. We're responsible for our families. We've got to make sure everything is taken care of, mapped out, planned in advance. Kids have lunch. Our dogs are fed. Like our home
Mm-hmm.
is clean and organized. And then when it comes to our business, it's just a whole nother level of responsibility and expectation. We have to make sure that customers are cared for. We have team members that we have to have managed and dealt
Mm-hmm.
with. We've got, all of these vendors that we work with. There's just all these
Yep.
aspects that pull that time, that attention, that energy. I think that the biggest thing here is that we forget that we get to decide how we engage
Mm-hmm.
with all of that. We get to
Yep.
decide how we invest our time, where we place our energy, and where our attention goes.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Medeiros.
And I'm Colleen Hungerford. And this is We're Doing This Right, right? A podcast for the whole woman, mind, body, soul, and business.
It's humor infused, as real as it gets, inspiring, and you'll walk away with real usable tools for life and business.
If you love what you're hearing, please share with a friend, subscribe so you'll never miss an episode, and rate and review whenever you listen.
So find your earbuds, lace up your walking shoes, or cozy up with a beverage of your choice. It's time to dig in.
Colleen, I understand you were doing it very right before we got on the call. Tell me more about.
I was doing it so right. I've had such a fab day already, and it's only noon here. So I'm really excited about today. I have some big news about my team that's coming out later this week, and I'm very excited about that. And then I was just like cranking out on something. So you guys, I was doing it right, but also wrong because I was late, and we have an amazing guest, and I apologize.
We do have a guest. Well, I guess let's jump in and chat with our guest.
Yeah, do it.
So today we have Michelle Houston on. Michelle Houston never planned to start a non-alcoholic spirit company, but then again, she never planned to give up alcohol either. A lifelong lover of craft cocktails, she spent years navigating the drinking culture of social events, business networking, and the booze-soaked hospitality industry. But when she ditched alcohol in 2021, she realized something was missing, a truly elevated, complex, and satisfying alternative. So she created the To Be Honest Beverage Company, a sophisticated option. She also has a podcast called Her First, which I think is going to really resonate with this group. So without
Yes.
further ado, welcome. Oh, and our connection. We met through Jamina Cannon, who does both of our hair. So you're going to want to make sure you catch a video because it looks really good.
Yeah, you guys' hair looks actually super fab. So
we're fantastic.
Good job.
So
And
welcome,
I'm a curly
Michelle.
girl, so.
A curly girl, and I am not a curl to be kind of girl. It air dried like this, in case anybody's wondering.
You woke up like that?
Well, I mean, I bathed because it was greasy, but yes, this is what it does after the shower with no heat, nothing. So be jealous, curly girls. I'm jealous of you, curly people.
Grass is always greener.
It is.
This can take a lot, but straight hair, I love my curly hair, but I definitely envy the simplicity of straight hair and the ease.
You know what's so funny, and this is not what we're talking about at all, but this is how things go. My daughter has curly hair, which I don't have curly hair. My husband doesn't, but she has blonde curly hair. Like, can you imagine that I have a blonde curly hair daughter? And I have to tell her every day, like, listen, mom actually curls her hair so it can look like yours. Chill out. So it is interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, oh my God, Michelle, we're so excited that you're here. And I wanted to just make a note because we just had Kristen from Orange Jilly on in our last episode. And one of the things that I consistently hear from the NA community or from the sober curious community, and I think this really pertains to a lot of our listeners, is that there is this fatigue of alcohol at social events and networking events. And I think that that's something that we, especially as business owners, when you're out there trying to like hustle your business and make connections. And I have felt this before where you're just like, oh my God, it's just so much. And that whole networking and events and things is inundated with alcohol. And so it's so interesting to hear you mention that even in your bio as well.
When I stopped drinking, I like to explain this story because people think like, oh yeah, sometimes it's simpler for other people. You're not as exposed to it. You don't have it around all the time. So my husband's been in alcohol production for over 10 years, craft beer, mead and now hard cider. And he's a partner in a cider company and manages the manufacturing. And I was a beer buyer at one point. My sisters are both professional bartenders. And we lived the life around alcohol. We're based on the Central Coast of California, San Luis Obispo. Wine events, wine pairings, beer classes, festivals, wine tasting like on the weekends. My life was saturated with alcohol. And I didn't see it as an issue. And for a lot of people, it's not. It's a part of their lifestyle. Drinking is such a cultural thing. It's a social thing. It's a ritual. We engage with it in so many different ways. And it can be positive in certain environments. But once you kind of have it in all the places, it becomes overwhelming. And then it starts to impact your health. Maybe it impacts your sleep. Maybe it impacts the way that you engage with other people. And for me, I just realized it was everywhere in my life. It was affecting my mental health. It was contributing to anxiety. It was creating lethargy and lack of motivation. When you talk about, highly motivated, high-performing people, we want to be on point. There's got to be clarity. There's got to be focus.
Right.
We want to be productive. Like we want to be moving through our lives in that flow and in that experience of vibrance, exuberance, health, thriving, like all of those terms that you ideally want your life to be surrounded by. And I just felt like alcohol was detracting from that for me. And that's essentially why I transitioned and why we created something as an alternative to replace that cultural ritual experience. Because when you stop drinking alcohol, doesn't mean you want to stop drinking anything altogether. And you still have those social experiences. You still have that way of life. And you got to figure out how to fit into that after you get rid of it or, transition a little bit here and there.
Yeah, I think what's interesting too, and Cheryl, I know you have a lot to say because a lot of things she just said you resonate with, I know. And but the other thing that I think is really interesting I think a lot of people's perspectives, there is an assumption that if you're alcohol free, you must have been an alcoholic, right? Like there must have been like some big problem.
Rock bottom.
Yeah, like you're like drinking all day, every day, 24 hours a day and like drunk at kid pickup or something like that, right? Like, and I don't hear people saying that. I hear people saying like, hey, you know what? I actually wasn't feeling good. It wasn't helping me in my life and I feel better without it versus this previous conception of like, oh, wow, you don't drink, you must have had a problem. And I think that's a really cool conversation.
I think we're in a totally different era. Like there is a different narrative around alcohol consumption and not drinking altogether. And so whereas there used to be kind of this old black and white mentality, right? You either drank or you didn't drink. And if you weren't drinking, it was because you had a problem or maybe you were pregnant. And so like things are across the spectrum now. We have hybrid drinking, flex drinking, sober curious, sober. Like you have all of these kind of like new terms, new identities, and new ways of being that have opened up the conversation for an alternative way of consumption because people started kind of waking up to the fact that, oh, I don't need to drink alcohol all the time. Like, yes, I'm an adult, but I don't need to have alcohol at every occasion. And that's where a lot of people start opening up to the alternatives. Also, we didn't have all of these alternatives previously. If you had thought about like non-alcoholic wine, non-alcoholic beer 10 years ago, 5 years ago, there just wasn't as much access and they weren't that great. So alternatives
you were drinking
themselves,
you were drinking O'Doul's. My uncle. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. My uncle, who like notoriously did have a drinking problem, was always drinking O'Doul's everywhere we went. And I was like, okay, let's see.
Yeah. And
gross.
So there are two main things that people look for with drinking, and that's flavor and function. And so we didn't have all of these functional categories. We didn't have all these different experiences. We didn't have exposure to the actual products that we could consume as alternatives. And so I think that's really changed the narrative a lot. And there's a lot more acceptance. There's a lot more conversations. A lot of celebrities come out talking about their sober experiences or why they stopped drinking alcohol and what their life looks like because of it. And when we start to make things more mainstream and more more culturally relevant and find that in entertainment in our media, it starts to trickle down effect. And, as consumers, we feel more comfortable making those choices. We identify with those larger names and can say, oh, Anne Hathaway stopped drinking. Oh, Tom Holland doesn't drink. Oh, then that's okay for me. And it kind of changes the perception of how we can engage in the world. And then what we see from a social perspective.
I had a friend, or I have a friend, she's still around, who stopped drinking, and she and I went to college together. Like, we went through those phases of like drinking heavily together. And she stopped like 6 months before I did. And seeing that she stopped very much was like, well, if she can do it, I can do it. Because we were so similar, and we went through those big boozing phases together. What resonates with me is like, a million people have quit drinking. You quit drinking and then turned it into an opportunity. Can you talk to me about kind of the entrepreneurial journey to get there, and your background and how you were brave enough to do it?
So I think it's funny because at this point, when I reflect on it, I feel like we stumbled into the business. I mean, all of the pieces were there, and I feel like we've been leading up to this point, but I never thought that I would launch a physical product business, especially in CPG, consumer packaged goods, consumables. It's a whole different beast in terms of business. I come from the service provider side. So I have a background in fitness. I taught bar, yoga, functional fitness, transitioned into health coaching, personal training. And so I worked with one-to-one, small group, or larger classes at that capacity for years. And then I started transitioning into the online space. So I offered digital products, programs, and hosted, fitness, self-care retreats, all of those kinds of things in the online space. Through that transition, and kind of part of my work in the past had been a lot around marketing and sales. I've always been interested in entrepreneurship. Like, everything that I read, listen to is around business building, entrepreneurial development, startups, marketing, content creation. And I have always just been very kind of personally motivated to reach for the next thing, create freedom, and like build the life that I want. And so that kind of led into this entire experience because my husband, like I mentioned, has been in alcohol production. So he has been engaged in the CPG space. He manufactures. And when I stopped drinking, it became a conversation of, well, what would a non-alcoholic alternative look like? We talked about RTD, ready to drink in cans. That would have to be high volume, low profit margin. Okay, let's not go there. And that's how we kind of ended up with our product, which is kind of more the boutique, bespoke, 750 milliliter, spirit alternative option. And then when I mentioned the mental health, the anxiety, and things that I was struggling with, we went the functional route with the hemp infusion and the CBD because of that. So I think that a lot of times as we're navigating these spaces, maybe starting something new or thinking about something, we don't give ourselves enough credit for all the ways that the pieces fall into place. And when I look back at my life and kind of where I was headed up until this point, and of course, where it kind of intersects with Jeremy, my partner and husband, it makes sense, right? And that's why the company was developed, and that's why we created the product to fit the need that I feel like I wanted at the time, and have just kind of run with it. It's not a huge company. We don't have a ton of funding. We're not like a lot of other CPG brands that get launched and get into like 100 retail locations. We're very grassroots, very small. I'm doing a lot of public relations and direct outreach because of that.
Right.
But it's been an exciting journey, and I think that it has a huge opportunity to grow because one of the things that really resonates with the brand with folks is connecting with the stories and the relatability aspect of it. And that has really been an inspiration, hearing customer experiences with their transition away from alcohol, or how finding an alcohol alternative has been really important for them.
I'm curious if you would be willing to share what it's like to be in partnership with your spouse.
Oh yeah, I'll talk about that all day. So
I laugh because I've done this. I laugh because I've done this, and it was fine. But also, tell us the truth.
So,
to be honest, what's it like?
Anyone going into business? So, to be honest, anyone going into business with their partner should be super intentional from the beginning. If I could do things a little bit differently, I definitely would. That being said, my husband and partner Jeremy is my favorite person in the world. I have so much admiration, respect, and love for that man. And his ability to navigate the communication, my desires, my issues and problems and everything that I come with to the table when it comes to business and personal life, let's be real. But
Yeah.
he's an amazing man. So I think you have to be really intentional. Not everyone can manage that type of relationship, and not everyone's equipped or set up to do so. I think that he has a past and experience that is very complex. I won't share too many details, but he had a really difficult childhood and navigated a life that kind of set him up to be more open to conversation, to managing problems or disputes, or to be able to just navigate everything that comes up related to a business that we all know can happen. And so, one of the things that I think has been really important and very helpful is clearly defining roles. And we didn't even do that at the very beginning, which is something I would have done very differently. But recently, we've kind of more so been very intentional about this is our personal life and this is our professional life and this is how we engage in our business, and we have to treat it that way. I'm a little bit more cut and dry, a little bit more brash, a little bit more to the point, and I tend to be like, hey, let's get it done, let's do the thing. And he is a little bit more like, okay, but let's talk about it and how can we manage this, and a little bit more like circumnavigate. And so what we've done recently is said, these are the times that we're working on the business. We have a weekly 1.5 to 2 hour meeting that's structured after the EOS model level 10. And we get in, we do the work, and we talk a lot about the things that we're trying to navigate in business at that time. And then we have our separate roles. And so now we've clearly defined our roles and exactly what's in our purview of activity for the business. So if we have something that comes up or needs to get done, it's really easy for us to identify and say, okay, that's under your purview, that's your role, that's your responsibility. Do you have the capacity to handle that or not? Yes, no, and then we move from there. So it's just kind of being really intentional and thoughtful about how and when we're engaging in business outside of our relationship, and then how we're being super clear about what it is that comes up and how we engage in that thing. And then just being thoughtful about how we're communicating with each other. I've had to kind of pull back a little bit and be less intense, for lack of a better word, because when I'm working with contractors, consultants, other partners, other people, I tend to be very upfront and a little bit more directional in the way that I work. And so I've had to be a little bit less upfront about things and a little more like, okay, let's be more mindful about the way I approach this.
Sugarcoating the
it's
delivery. It's brutal. I hate doing that, but it's part of working with other personalities. Have you taken
yeah.
personality tests or any of those behind the scenes to like see how you mesh and how to like the disc test or Clifton Strengths or, Enneagram, all the things that just warm my heart.
So I'm super big into those things. I've taken DISC, Enneagram, Myers-Briggs, and actually StrengthsFinder is my favorite. I've taken it several times over the course of my professional life. We had someone on the podcast specifically talk about Clifton Strengths because I think it's such an important tool for each of us to better understand ourselves and the way that we show up in our talents to be able to maximize that, and then also learn how they might be inhibiting us and holding us back. And so recently I actually had him do it. To be fair, I purchased it like 8 to 10 months ago, but it just took him a long time to be able to actually execute on
It tracks.
making it
That
happen.
tracks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it tracks. Let's not talk about the other things that are on that list. But anyway, so Clifton Strengths, he took it. And so I've been able to look at his. We've talked about it a little bit, but we'll be able to leverage it more going forward. He's very high in strategic thinking and relationship building. I'm super high in strategic thinking and influencing. And so funny, we don't actually have a lot of high execution skills, either of us, which also makes sense in terms of how we manage things and how we go about our lives. But I'm trying to look at it more as like, okay, these are my talents. These are my skill sets. These are the ways that I'm strong. Similarly for him, how can we either outsource, find, complement, and figure out how to improve these areas that might be lacking in our business or where we're kind of falling short? Or I recognize that this is a strong suit for me, and therefore I'm avoiding these other things. So, okay, let me think a little bit more strategically about what I'm avoiding and how can I work that a little bit differently to improve my day-to-day, my productivity, what I'm working towards, and again, where we're kind of missing out on things.
It seems like whenever you hire someone, you're going to need to hire someone that fits very in that execution box.
That's like my number one.
We're Clifton Strengths nerds.
Yep.
We freaking love it. Tell us, we want to know. Tell us what's in your top 5.
Yeah.
So
Do you-
yeah, so I have 4 strategic thinking. Let me see if I can remember all of them. So learner, intellect. Ooh, I'm like blanking on them. I can actually pull them
It's
up.
okay.
real
We put
quick.
you on the spot. We put you on the spot.
Yeah.
Because Cheryl and I know, and we've talked about this in other episodes, like we think of ourselves as very similar, but when we did our Clifton Strengths, they were not the same.
Mm-hmm.
And that was so interesting to us. And then it's so funny you bring this up because I am in the process of adding more people to my team. And like I asked someone the other day, I was like, have you done your Clifton Strengths? Like I'd like to see it. And if they haven't, this is the tool that I'm now sending to anybody who's going to be working on my team, because to your point, and we've talked about this, like you need to hire the gaps, right? Like I'm really good at a lot of things, but execution is not, is not one of my strengths. And so this person that's joining my team that I'm super excited about is an execution type person. Now I need to have her do the Clifton Strengths because I'm so interested to see, but I know already that she fills in the gaps that I don't have. And it feels like such the right fit. But to be able to do that with your spouse, I'm going to buy the Clifton Strengths for my husband, David, because we don't work together, but I just want to know because I think it's relationship wise. I think it's just so important.
Well, let's be real. You do work together, like managing the house.
Yeah, we do.
Mhm.
And
Managing the
parenting
family.
and managing and all of that. And I think and we did work together and we are very different. So I think that when we ran our business together, that helped us. But I would also love to know, Michelle, like you talked about the things that you wish you had done differently, and not to highlight the bad, right? I think there's so much good in that. But I think it's helpful for other people to see, like, what is it? Like, what would you have done differently to start?
It is really important from a partnership perspective to really understand yourself and really understand the other person. So I think that 5 love languages is a really important thing from a personal perspective that, of course, kind of bleeds over into the professional side. That's very helpful for communication with your partner and recognizing the way in which they give and receive. And then the Clifton Strengths, very much in terms of like working relationship, very, very helpful. What are those top 5? What are the top 10? Where are they strong? Because what I think happens in any relationship, either from a spousal perspective or a partnership perspective, or you are hiring someone, is that we start to make assumptions about ourselves versus them because we think certain things are simple, easy. I can do this. Why can't they? Why aren't they getting this? This doesn't make any sense. And that's where a lot of the breakdown starts to happen. Again, in any relationship, but especially as a business owner, if you're working with consultants, team members, contractors. And I love the Clifton Strengths for this reason, working with individuals to better understand where they are strong, what skills they are particularly good at, already without any additional training, guidance, etc. And then also understanding, so from the EOS model, I like to use, it's the GWC, it's the get it, want it, capacity to do it. And they have to fit all of those 3 things for the role. So that being said, going back to kind of where we not messed up, but the places where we started and things that I would have definitely done differently. Things are always going to evolve and change in business. You might start in one place and then you pivot to another and then you offer this different thing and you're kind of guided and sometimes intuitively led, sometimes pushed because of the economy or what's happening around you. Industry changes, things shift, and that's okay. But when we got started, I wasn't necessarily very clear about what I wanted the business to be. And so that definitely shifted our focus from the very beginning. Now I'm very, very clear on the vision and strategy of building the direct-to-consumer side of our brand via e-commerce, which creates the brand awareness and gets the loyalty and the buy-in, as opposed to going the distribution and wholesale right off the bat. And so when we first got started, we kind of had a distribution model in place and assumed that that would be 75% maybe of our sales. But without building the brand awareness, people aren't buying the product on shelves or in stores. And so you're going to shift and change. But I think where I would have done things very differently is be a lot more clear, either based on research or talking to competitors and like learning from other people about where our focus and attention was from the very beginning. And then during the first year, there was a lot of trial and experimentation, and we did a lot of activations, lots of like donation type things, exchange events that we felt like would be good alignment for the brand at a local level, which was positive. And we did learn a lot in terms of customer discovery. We talked to thousands of people. We were having people taste the product in person. It was face to face, but it really didn't grow our business at all. We made a very minimal amount of sales, and it wasn't really set up for the long-term success of the company. And so I didn't have systems in the beginning that were designed for scale. And so that's something I also would have done very differently. Instead of saying like, oh yeah, we'll do this, oh my gosh, we did like 250 tiny sample bottles to a golf tournament down in like the Thousand Oaks area. Yeah. And they were wonderful. It was a great cause. It was a benefit event. We were happy to partner with them, but nothing came out of the partnership. And so we put a lot of energy, resources, time, and attention on things that didn't have an ROI. And I look back and I'm like, gosh, I quote unquote know that. I've done this before in other ways. How come I made that choice? And so, of course, you do see them as mistakes, but they're just learning lessons, and they just help navigate you toward those things that are going to build and improve the business over time.
And I think those things, I can relate to that so much in both, like my mom and I had a bakery business, and we were like selling at farmers markets and stuff like that. And somebody gave us an opportunity to be in a gift bag for the Sundance Film Festival. And of course, for free, right? Like they didn't pay us. And we were like, oh my God, this is an amazing opportunity. We're going to get so much PR and press and our name's going to be everywhere. And it was, but it wasn't. And nothing directly came from that. I mean, the time and effort and energy and thought that you put into those things, but you just don't know. And I think that's the thing that I think as an entrepreneur is what drives you to keep going and drives you to kind of make these quote unquote mistakes sometimes, is like, there could have been one person at that golf tournament that would have been like, oh my God, like this is the most amazing non-alcoholic drink I've ever had, right? And I think as an entrepreneur, there's a little bit of optimism always in your mind, like it could be the thing. Right? There could be somebody who eats our scones at Sundance and is like, I need these on all my sets and I'm going to fund this place. And I think it's kind of that dreamer, big thinking that pushes you to do those things. Or even in our businesses, you throw the spaghetti at the wall. And I think that's part of building a business in the first year. You just don't know. But I think there is some lessons for new business owners to heed, is like, you can't just give your shit away for free all the time. Like there's got to be some ROI, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's just shifted the mindset. So now we have very clear parameters, because you get asked all the time as a physical product business to donate, to have your product at this event, to serve at this thing. Oh, we'll share your logo, we'll share your brand. And whereas I love that the intention is there and the aspect of community is there, really from a business perspective, especially since we're trying to grow and scale, we don't want to be a local mom and pop style business forever. We've started that way, again, like I said, more the grassroots, but we eventually want to be a valued company and be in the multi-millions and be able to sell or get acquired majority or whatever that looks like. And so with that vision, it's definitely shifted the way that I think about time and attention, energy, and resources. And people are always going to want those things from you as a business owner. And you don't realize how much you're giving away and how much opportunity you're allowing to leave your sphere of success and your ability to perform and the scale that you're looking to accomplish when someone asks for a meeting or they want a bottle for an event or they're doing this thing and then they have all these questions. And so I've taken a big step back, and that was kind of part of our, annual review and planning for the beginning of the year that Jeremy and I did to say, okay, this is where we spend a lot of our time and energy. Yes, we made money, but really the long-term growth of the brand was not built through those strategies. What is going to do that? And now we're focusing our energy on those things that are meant to take us forward into what we want to accomplish, as opposed to, oh, let me take this. Oh, let me do this thing. Oh, let me try this. Or, it was very scattered. And sometimes you do have to go through that process to understand what it's going to take. But upon reflection, I probably would have thought more clearly about that from the beginning and given less of my time, attention, and energy away.
Time is the big one, right? Like, I think when you're starting a business, you feel like, I don't have any money, but I've got time. And so you give and you give and you give and you give. And I think as you continue in any business, in any entrepreneurial thing, or as an executive or whatever, you realize that the time is the most valuable of all the things, right? Like, that is almost sometimes more than money. Like, that is the highest valued thing, at least for me, in my business and in my life, right? And I do still find times where I take a meeting and I'm like, God fucking damn it. Like, that was a waste of my time. And I'm so mad about it. Like, I would have rather paid $100 to not go to that meeting. You know what I mean? Or something like, but I think that is like the highest value when you really start to get into your business. It is when you start, it is the thing that you can give. It is the thing that you can give. But I think as you start to mature in your business and you start to mature and grow, that is the most valuable part, the biggest asset that you have in your business.
I completely
Charles
agree.
Barkley is here today. I hear him in the background with the
This
speakers.
motherfucker, it's like I'm trying to mute because he's banging on the door, and then I had to run out because he like grabbed part of my ring light and was chewing it. So sorry, guys.
That's okay. So I want to talk about your podcast because I'm fascinated with how you were explaining it. So tell the audience about your podcast and kind of what you talk about, and maybe highlight your favorite episode or nugget that you've learned. Because that's one of my favorite things, is like all the things we get to learn here. And I'm sure it's probably similar for you.
Our podcast has been kind of an opportunity and exploration for myself to find my voice and really figure out what I'm passionate about, what I want to talk about, and what I kind of want to bring into my personal brand and coaching side of my business. And so it's called Her First for High Achieving Women. I actually don't remember the exact title. I know that's terrible, but I never look at the title. I just publish the podcasts and record them. So just search Her First, High Achieving Women. You'll find it. It's myself and my co-host, Joanna Newton. And so we met. I was talking kind of about the little bit of the background. I think that there are so many opportunities that present themselves, and sometimes you have to be intuitively led to hold on to them. And I feel like my meeting my co-host is one of those things. So we met at a conference, a business conference down in Austin, Texas, and hit it off. And originally we were just planning on being podcast accountability partners to help pitch ourselves to other podcasts to grow our brands and grow our businesses. She runs a 7-figure digital marketing agency for launching courses, creating funnels for experts and professionals, content creators in the digital space. And then after a couple months, we're like, this is ridiculous. Let's just start our own podcast. So we did. And it kind of started and evolved from more like personal development, balancing business and life. I come from the health coaching background. So it was a lot about how, as women especially, we don't prioritize ourselves. And so how do we navigate that when we have all of that pull from the time, the attention, the resources, from a family perspective, from a friend's perspective, from a community perspective. And then, of course, you've got your business and you've got clients and you've got contacts and customers and all of these things. So how do you kind of balance that? And then it kind of segued more into personal branding, marketing strategy, and kind of business development, still with the undertone of personal development, taking care of yourself, and mindset and intention of how you approach these things. Like you're saying, time. Not everyone recognizes how important and valuable their own time is. And so sometimes that's a learning lesson and a process that we have to go through. So now we have guests on the podcast and we kind of highlight their, professional abilities, what they've been able to accomplish. We've had Enneagram, we've talked about Clifton Strengths. We kind of try to highlight things that will benefit the listener to better understand themselves and better be able to capitalize on their ability to succeed in business, whatever that might look like. And then we also spotlight culturally relevant women in like a celebrity status or political or someone who's been really influential in the digital space. They've created a name for themselves. We try to highlight the struggles, difficulties, and the timeline that they've gone through because I think people see levels of success and they don't realize the work, the effort, the difficulty that it usually took to get there. So we highlight those aspects and then we really extract lessons from their personal branding and how they present themselves and try to provide takeaways and applicable tips and tools that someone can use in their own brand or their own business. And then of course we share a story and kind of like move through that. So that's the podcast and that's kind of what we focus on and what we try to bring to the world through content. And then in terms of like my favorite thing, I'm actually doing some smaller content pieces on this right now, is there was a book that was introduced at that same conference, Kajabi Hero Live in Austin, Texas. The author is Priya Parker, and it's called The Art of Gathering. And I think that that has been one of the biggest and like most influential pieces of learning that I've had through my kind of entrepreneurial journey, because ultimately we're creating spaces. We're hosting this podcast. We're having this conversation. People are tuning into it. We're holding a container for someone to have an experience. They're listening. They have emotions. There are unspoken rules. There's this thing that we're creating. If we're in a coaching environment, that's one-to-one. We're hosting a space for them. If we're doing group coaching, that's multiple people. Membership, one-to-many. Creating content online, even as a brand with TBH. I'm creating an experience and an exchange for other people to engage in. And so the art of gathering is really about structuring that environment, being really intentional about the why, the goals, and what it is that you're doing, and then being able to just kind of navigate that. How do you inform people? How do you show up as a host, as an individual? How do you address issues that come about from that? And I think it's something that we miss a lot of times. And I think it's simple if you get down to like the basics and the foundation of it. But I think it can change the way that we engage with other human beings, which is ultimately, again, what we're creating in the world, because it's always humans that we're interfacing with in some way. And when we think about our marketing, when we think about our business, when we think about what we're creating, when we think about customer service, we're creating small containers, we're setting the rules, and we're determining the rules of engagement. And we get to decide on that. And we get to be thoughtful about that. And so that's kind of one of the biggest things that I feel like I've taken away from the podcast. We've had a lot of great guests. We've talked about a lot of really great names, the AOC, Reese Witherspoon and her book club, Beyonce, like all of these amazing women and highlighting them. But I feel like that's one of the biggest takeaways that I feel like can be so applicable in so many settings.
And thinking about how your Clifton Strengths is intellectual, and I can just see it. You're so smart and you know so much about so many things. And I feel in such alignment with you. And like I'm such an activator and a doer that I don't ever take the time to stop and intellectualize what it is that I'm doing. Like I can't tell you the number of times like Rachel just reached out. She's like, "Oh my God, I'm reading a book that you could have written." And I'm like, "Oh shoot, why didn't I?" I need to intellectualize some of these things that I just like do and that are embodied in being in this space with you is it, so inspiring by your intellect. Thank you for
Aw.
sharing.
Yes. I just downloaded the book. That is one that I have not. I mean, like Cheryl and I are kind of these kind of book nerds as well. We're nerdy in a lot of ways.
What other
But I
kind of
had
books?
not.
Another kind of
Oh,
books.
we also
Or
like dragon books.
romantasy.
That's we also like
Let's
dragon
not
books.
start down that conversation because I went through the past year, needed some major romantasy. It's like a spiral. I can't even tell you. We started with one. Started with
What did you
one.
start with? What did you start
Oh my
with? We
God.
will start this
This
conversation.
is my
What did you start
husband's
with?
fault. This is my husband's. Blame
Your friend
Jeremy.
would read them.
He read this book, listened to it, and thought that I would enjoy it. And at the time, when I tell you personal development, like my strategic thinking, these are my strengths.
Yeah.
Personal development, entrepreneurship, business growth. Everything I listened to, read, consumed was all of that nature. I had just bought 3 Joe Dispenza books. I read Alex Hermosi's stuff, like all that. So when he introduced Fourth Wing,
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a slippery
We
slope
know.
from there.
We know.
That was
it
my
was a
first
slippery
too.
slope. Yep. And so, of course I went from that.
I've read them
series-
twice. I've read them
Same.
twice, all of them.
No shame.
Yep.
Multiple
No
times.
shame.
I'm an audiobook person.
Same. Me
So listening. So started with those series. And then of course I did A Court of Thorns. And then down the rabbit hole. Like
Where'd
I can't
you go?
even tell you. Now it's we went some places. Let's just say I learned a lot of things. I was exposed to a lot of things. There's a book I really like that I would recommend. It's not in the fantasy, but it's called The Lights Out.
Oh.
Okay.
It's really funny. When I was first starting to read it, I was like, oh my God, I don't know if I can handle this because there's kind of some intense stuff. But it's a really good story overall. It does have a happy ending and it's very funny. And then the Prince of Sin series. Have you guys read that?
I have not yet, but I will.
Okay, look up Prince of Sin series.
All right, so you're taking notes. I have a book club. We call it Shadow Mommies to go match the Shadow Daddies. So yes, take notes, Shadow Mommies.
Oh my gosh, that's a crack up. And then there's one more series that I really liked. I can't remember the name of the series, but it's like a blood and ash.
I'm in
Oh
it
my
right
God,
now. I'm in it right now.
I couldn't
read all
finish
those.
the series. I couldn't finish it. I got to like the midway point of, I think I read like 4 books. First of all, there's like 1 billion books in that series.
There
But
are.
I got,
Well, and there's
I
another
had to
series
take a
that lines
break.
up that you can like read at
It's like
the
the
same
past
time.
and then the present. Yeah.
Yeah, so I just am starting the past right now. So
Okay.
I've read 3
Oh.
of the Flesh and Fire, and I'm jumping into the other one. No, I read 3 of Blood and Ash. Now I'm jumping into the other one. But I'm taking a break so I can catch up on some of my podcasts because I can do nothing but listen to these books once I fall into the rabbit hole.
I think that's what happened to me is I stopped the Blood and Ash series because we talked about this, Cheryl. I was like getting it was too much. Like I was getting so into and like it's all I wanted to do. But the good part about it is that I listened to them while I walked. So I was really getting my steps in while I was doing this. I was like 10,000 steps. How about 20? But it was just to a point where I had to stop. But I am reading A Court of Thorn and Roses series again because after the third book of Fourth Wing, I needed some kind of palate cleanser, refresher, or something, and I couldn't get deep into another story. I just had to do something that was comfortable.
Yeah. I
feel that. The book hangover, man. The book hangover. I just feel like so lost when I finish one of the series.
It's
What do I do
real.
with my
And
life?
I'm so grateful because I do know, like, if you follow Book Talk or like watch anything, you recognize like you're not alone. Like people,
No.
we're like, this is a whole thing. We love this.
And I think it's really important. What I realized, similar to what you're talking about, Michelle, is that I was like constantly like business book, business podcast, business thing. And I realized I had no fun. Like there was nothing that was just light and fun. And not that these are light, but you know what I mean? Like it was just nothing that was like just for fun. Like drive my kids to school. On the way home, I was listening to a business book. On the way to everything, I was listening to a podcast. Charlie sucks. Sorry. That's my dog, not my child, just so everybody knows. But I felt like these are a way, or any kind of like, easy reading is a really wonderful way, one, to just give your brain some stimulation, but also a break, and to have some fun and to have some joy. Like, I think those are so important, especially for women like us who are these high achieving women. And I also think, and like, it was funny when I talked to my husband and he's like, "Oh, you like those like fairy books, or what's happening in a fairy book or
And
whatever."
you
It's
like
like,
them too, honey. It's good for both of
I
us.
was, yeah, but I think the main thing for me was I love the storyline, and it's in a lot of these storylines where it's like a strong female character and a strong male character, and they coexist in a way that is really, eventually, whatever, but is really cool, and they're allowed to both be strong. And there's
Yeah.
never this idea of like one has to be weaker than the other. They can both. And I think that that is not a storyline that we see or haven't seen previously very often. And I
Yeah.
think it really speaks to me.
It's also a woman stepping into her power in all of
Oh,
them.
yeah.
Like starting out with the imposter syndrome and the doubt, and then just stepping in and owning her power. It's such a great escape in my
Yeah.
world. My shadow mommies were saying the other day how grateful they are with all my daughter's health stuff going on, and they're like, how lucky that I'm reading Blood and Ash, and I get to be with Cass and Poppy while
Yeah.
I'm like going through this really hard part in my life. I like have this to escape to, and they were
Oh my
thrilled that
gosh.
I hadn't read it yet, and I was getting to experience it all for the first time.
I
It's
think it's
great.
really powerful. And I think you're completely right about being really powerful for women. Quite frankly, I feel like I come from a little bit of a background that's on the more conservative side, not because of any impressed, didn't grow up religious or anything, but
Sure.
I just had kind of a certain perception of the world and of myself.
Yeah.
And I started listening to these at a time that was really tough. So we had to put down both of our dogs at the same time last year. And we don't have kids. Our dogs were alive over 10
Yeah.
years of, a relationship with someone who's with you all the time. And that
Yeah.
was a really big shift and change in mine and Jeremy's life. And so I was going through a lot of grief at the time, and he suggested those books again as a way to get away from, you are so focused all the time. You're constantly, even if you're not quote unquote working, you're adjacent working by listening to something that is in that personal development, business growth thing. And that's all really
Right.
positive. So I don't want to discount
Yes.
that.
Right.
But sometimes we need something that pulls us away, that gives us that freedom, that gives us that escape. I totally have an addictive personality, so I will admit to this. I tend to get a little obsessive, and you're absolutely right. It was like listening to it all the time, a little too much. And yes, there is smut. And yes, there is a lot of those things. But I feel like for me, that awakened something in turn. I haven't talked about this at all, by the way, but it's awakened this sort of like not just sexual energy, but confidence and prowess, I feel like, that has enhanced my life. It's enhanced my ability to show up. It's improved my content creation. It's made me more, I think it's made me more magnetic in my life to draw people in. I connect with people better on a social side of things. I've developed deeper and more like significant friendships in my life with other women because of this. And it's changed the way that I approach my business and that I see myself in the world. And you're absolutely right in terms of the strong female characters. And they've typically gone through some type of hardship, some kind of difficulty. So it highlights their strength and their ability to rise above and become something new, different, evolved in their storyline. And yes, they have the support of a strong male character. And so I think it's completely changed my brain. And I know that might sound totally ridiculous
Nope.
from someone from a third party perspective.
Nope.
Yeah.
I hear it
but-
all the time. You hear it all the time. It is brain chemistry changing, if however that is a thing.
Yeah.
I hope I agree.
So I am taking a pause, that being said, because I was a little too deep and I need to pull back. I need a little bit more like reality these days. And I feel like it got me through a phase in my life in which I really needed that help and I really needed that support. I needed to have those stories and feel that and feel the relatability of like, yes, as a woman, I can go through these challenges and I can rise above. And so I think it's powerful. And I think what it's done for me in my life personally and professionally has been huge. And that's what I'll say about that.
No, I'm so glad we said it. That needed to be unpacked in a big way.
Yeah.
Queen of Flesh and Fire. Tell the Blood Queen to prepare for war. That was how I went to bed last night.
Dude, it gets good. It gets good. But it also, I think
Also
those
is
books,
good already. I'm so
I think
happy.
those books are a little long-winded though. And not that we need to keep talking about
That's
this,
okay. I
but
listened to it all in 2 times, so it's
oh, well, there you go.
yeah. I'm
But I
doing
think
fine.
everything you said, Michelle, is 100% true. I think, and I think it's also very important to recognize that as businesswomen, it's okay to have something that is just for you, that's just for fun, that is not completely centered around constant achievement. And again, that none of that is bad. But I think there is time where, we had a guest on who talked about rest. This is a form of rest. This is a form of like mental rest for a
Oh,
lot of us.
yesterday. Let's talk about yesterday. So I had a very stressful Monday yesterday. Had a 90-minute massage scheduled. I'm famous for taking my phone in and like purging my emails during my massages because I have such a hard time shutting my brain down. I know I'm a psycho.
Yeah.
And so Colleen says, I hope you left your phone out. And I said, I didn't. But what I did do was I listened to my book the entire 90 minutes, and I've never had such a relaxing massage in all of my life. I was just somewhere else, not thinking about my own issues, my own problems. I was just enjoying a story while I got my massage, and I came out of it. I have a picture. I was like, oh, that was next level game changing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
10 out of
There's
10.
so much pressure from ourselves and from the external world to be constantly responsible. We're responsible
Yeah.
for our homes. We're responsible for our families. We've got to make sure everything is taken care of, mapped out, planned in advance. Kids have lunch. Our dogs are fed. Like our home is clean and organized. And then when it comes to our business, it's just a whole nother level of responsibility and expectation. We have to make sure that customers are cared for. We have team members that we have to have managed and dealt with. We've got, all of these vendors that we work with. There's just all these
Yep.
aspects that pull that time, that attention, that energy. And, as we get to decide, I think that the biggest thing here is that we forget that we get to decide how we engage with all of that. We get to
Yep.
decide how we invest our time, where we place our energy, and where our attention goes. And one of the powerful things for me was cutting away a lot of that noise and recognizing this is my life. I get to own this. I get to decide who I'm in a meeting with, where I'm sharing my space, like what all of that looks like. And that is, I feel like, a big shift and a really helpful tool, especially for a lot of us who maybe are getting started or don't feel as in control of our time when we're feeling overwhelmed or overly busy or frustrated about our circumstances. We have to take that ownership and we have to recognize the way in which we can start to manage, change, control. And even if it's little bits at a time, it's just starting to own that and recognizing how can I implement rest? How can I implement this thing that I'm trying to accomplish into my day, whether that's like a little bit of nutrition or a little bit of fitness or a little bit of time outside, whatever that looks like, is just trying to figure out like, okay, if I own my schedule and I get to be in charge of that, how can I do that? If I'm on a call that I don't want to talk to someone, I'm like, hey, thanks so much for your time. I got to go.
Yeah. Bye.
Cut it off.
Peace.
Bye.
I'm out.
Done.
Done.
I started doing that. Yeah.
Well,
I
Michelle,
have done
thank you
that
so much for your
recently.
time. We have to, no. I'm just kidding. But we are at the end.
Like,
I was
so
like,
on that note-
wait, what's happening? Okay, I want to talk to you a million more times, Michelle. The other one thing I want to say, because we do probably need to be respectful of your time, is I think you really hit it on the head, whatever that saying is when you said that we put the pressure on ourselves. There is so much external pressure, but I think the biggest pressure we have as high achieving women, entrepreneurs, business owners, blah, 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 whatever, is the pressure we put on ourselves. And I think it's so important that we are in control of our time. We are in control of the stress that we give ourselves and we put on ourselves. And I think that is a conversation that needs to continue to happen, because I've said a million times, like, no one needs to put any pressure on me. I put enough pressure on myself to achieve, to meet my goals, to do my stuff, right? Like, even as a kid, it was like, you don't need to tell me to do my homework. I'm already stressed out about it. I'm already trying to do it, And I think that is something to be aware of, is that we are in control of that. We are in control of how we spend our time. We are in control of the stress that we put on ourselves. And we are in control of rest and taking that time to do all of those things and say goodbye to the lame guy on the Zoom who's annoying, So anyway, I think we think you're fabulous. We think you're wonderful. We're so thankful that you're here and have taken the time with us today. And everyone, please. Okay, so Michelle, where can they find you? Plug your show and also your business.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. I think creating the platform is really important, that we have these conversations. I think normalizing a lot of the things that we talked about today is really important, because what happens, and I think this is the hardest part, especially for women, is that when we feel alone or isolated in our experiences, that is, I think, the most damaging, the most difficult, the most challenging to go through. And recognizing all the ways in which we share either similarities or interests or stressors or, you know, the good things, the romantasy, like once we recognize we're not alone, we're not isolated, then we can start to expose, because when we usually hide those things, that's when they become glaring problems in our lives.
Yeah.
And so
Agreed.
having the conversation, exposing these things, talking about how we did struggle with this, how we've potentially overcome it, or that we're still navigating it, because it's a journey and it's never completely figured out. It's all day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year. So it's an evolution. But if you're interested in our business, To Be Honest Beverage Company, the functional spirit alternative to alcohol or liquor in your cocktail, you can find us at To Be Honest Bev. That's TOBE Honest. Bev is in beverage on all social media platforms. And then you can find us at that same address on our website, tobehonestbev.com. And then our podcast is Her First. We'll just say High Achieving Women. And you can find us on all of the podcast platforms there. And then my personal brand is The Michelle Puolani, and I'll be relaunching the personal branding, where personal development meets personal branding, on the coaching side of things as well.
I'm so excited.
Love that for
Well,
us.
thank you again so much for being here. And I hope to continue the conversation just in life locally too. I'm lucky we're near each other.
Yeah, I'm so
Absolutely.
jealous.
All right, you guys, we'll see you next week.
That's a wrap. Thank you for joining us on this journey of laughter, life, and growth.
And remember, you're not alone on this path to success. We're right here with you every step of the way.
Please remember to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And if you found value in today's conversation, we'd be thrilled if you would leave us a review on your favorite platform. Your feedback means the world to us.
And don't forget to share this podcast with your friends, family, and anyone who could use a good laugh and some practical insight into navigating the challenges and triumphs of our minds, body, soul, and business.
Remember, we're doing this right.